Hi everyone, welcome to another Timeform video preview over this festive period. This time looking at Tuesday's racing. We've got the fourth and final day of what's been some great action over at Leopardstown, and we've also got the Grade 1 Shallow Novice Hurdle from Newbury, as well as a good supporting card. I'm Timeform analyst Kieran Clark. I'll be covering two races from Newbury, and joining me to cover Leopardstown is our Irish correspondent Billy Nash. So we'll go over to Billy for his first selection.
Hi Kieran, yeah, first selection, it's a fairly obvious one, you'd have to say, in the Fort Leany at Leopardstown. It's very hard to get away from Monkfish. You know, this fella, I think, has the potential to go right to the top of the chasing tree. He's hopefully a Gold Cup horse of the future. And he was really impressive on his chasing debut at Fairyhouse. You know, he was the pick of these over hurdles. He beat Latest Exhibition in the Albert Bartlett, albeit narrowly, but he's much more of a chasing type than Latest Exhibition. If you get to see them tomorrow, Monkfish is a really good stamp of a chaser. Latest Exhibition, not the biggest in the world, but he, in fairness to him, he has made a good start over fences himself. His run behind Pensacola led the last day. Nothing wrong with it, but it was really hard not to be impressed with Monkfish at Fairyhouse. That beginner's chase has worked out really well, and the step up to 3 miles is sure to show him in an even better light. Now, it's not necessarily a two-horse race. Conflated, you couldn't really rule out. He was good at Navan the last day, wasn't stopping at the end of 2.5 miles. So if he gets the trip, he certainly comes into the equation. Eurobot is the other one. I think he was slightly fortunate at Thurles, but he's a horse we don't know a lot about. He's fairly unexposed. But all things being equal, I think Monkfish, like I said, I think he's a potential star of the future, and he's going to be very, very hard to beat.
Yeah, and he looks every inch a chaser as well. He's definitely probably one of the most exciting horses in training. It seems to be a really exciting bunch of novice chasers this year, actually, across the card of all distances.
Yeah, seems to be. And in fairness, Willie Mullins looks to have a very strong hand himself, and he's always sort of maintained that Monkfish is probably his best novice chaser. So if that's the case, you know, hopefully we'll get to see what he can really do tomorrow. And he looks like he looks like a real star of a horse, and I can't wait to see him again.
So that's the first one for Billy. I'll come across the first one of mine. It'll be in a 1:30 at Newbury, the novice handicap chase, and I find it quite hard to get away from Demachine of Kerry Lee's. Really, he should be favourite. He's probably one of the most progressive novice handicap chasers in training. He won on his seasonal reappearance and chasing debut at Utoxeter in a race that's been franked multiple times since then. Even if you go all the way down the field to the likes of Canelo, who was 10 for 11, he's come out and won twice. There's just winners everywhere you look in that race. And off a £10 higher marking and duly followed up at Ascot, when winning with a bit in hand, he beat what looks to be two winners in waiting in Young Bull, who was third to him at Utoxeter, and the third that day was Hold That Taut of Venetia Williams's. I think both those two might be hard to beat when coming out next time out, and Demachine beat them easily. He had a bit in hand. He's gone up a further £8, but I don't think his progression will be halted by that rise. And like I said, I'm surprised he's not favourite. Severano's favourite, who's won both his starts over fences. He beat Marvellous at Sandown by a short distance, but Marvellous was 9th in that Utoxeter race. He was easily put in his place by Demachine, and Severano since followed up at Exeter when winning a 7-runner race, and has had a bit of a hike in the weights for that, as you'd expect when winning easily. But I don't think that race was the strongest, and I just thought, looking at the race, that Demachine deserved to be favourite, and he's definitely the one I'd be siding with in this 1:30 at Newbury. The interesting one in the race would probably be Dicky Diver, who had some really good form as a novice hurdler. He was second to Lisnagar Oscar in a novice at Chepstow, only just beaten by a head, and then he won a maiden and then was 4th in the Albert Bartlett. He's not been seen since the Festival of 2019, and he's 7 riding 8, which suggests he's a bit fragile, so he just might have to prove his ability returns intact on his chasing debut, for all that he could be well handicapped. But it would be Demachine in the 1:30 for me at Newbury. So we'll go back across to Billy for his second selection.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the champion hurdle. And again, probably the likely favourite, I suppose, in Saint Roi, Willie Mullins's. He was I suppose, on the face of it, a shade disappointing in the Morgiana at Punchestown the last day, but things just didn't pan out for him. The race wasn't run to suit him. He pulled too hard. He missed a few hurdles down the back, and then got stuck in a pocket just as the pace was quickening, and he just wasn't in the best position. Abacadabra was a good winner on the day, but he did what Abacadabra tends to do. He travelled really well through his race, and then just when push came to shove, he just doesn't find a great deal. I mean, he's got a really high cruising speed, but he doesn't tend to find an awful lot off the bridle. And I think he's vulnerable again tomorrow. This is a much better race than the Morgiana, though. We've got a couple of really interesting contenders in the race. Top on Timeform ratings is Sharjah, another Willie Mullins horse. And of course, he won this last year, then went on to finish second to Epitant. Was a bit disappointing a couple of flat races during the summer, but you couldn't really knock him on that because I just don't think he's as good on the flat as he is over jumps. And the intriguing runner in the race is the other Mullins horse, the Paul Townend rides Saldier. Can't read too much into the fact that Paul Townend rides him, of course, with Saint Roi being owned by JP McManus, and Patrick Mullins is, he just seems to always ride Sharjah. So the fact that Townend rides Saldier isn't necessarily a positive for Saldier, but look, he's an exceptionally talented horse. The problem with him is we don't see him very often. He won the Morgiana last year, the 2019 edition. We haven't seen him since. There was talk of running him on the flat during the summer. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. He has bags of ability, but he's clearly very fragile. Hard to know what to expect from him tomorrow, certainly unless the market is very positive about him. You couldn't contemplate backing him. But going back to Saint Roi, I just think this race is going to suit him a lot better than the Punchestown race. You've got the likes of Aspire Tower and Petit Mouchoir in the race. Both of them are confirmed front runners. They'll make it a good gallop. The track at Leopardstown, much more galloping than the inside track at Punchestown. That will suit Saint Roi. And I think if there is a potential champion hurdle horse in the field, it is Saint Roi, and hopefully he's going to show his class tomorrow.
Yeah, and you think back to when he won the county hurdle at the festival last season as well. The way he travelled and quickened away, you don't really win competitive handicaps like that unless you're a really smart performer. So, yeah, definitely made a good case for Saint Roi. Just before I go on to my next selection at Newbury, I thought I'd just do a quick mention for the Grade 1 Challow Novice Hurdle, which has got a really illustrious roll of honour. The last two seasons, it's been won by Champ and Time Hill, and then in the past, the likes of Denman and Diamond Harry Rev de Civila have all won it. It looks an absolutely brilliant renewal this year. I'm not going to put up a selection, but 5 of the 6 runners have Timeform Ps, and the head of the market is Brave Man's Game, who easily won a novice at this track last time out. Looks a really progressive type for Paul Nicholls. He's probably a chaser in the making, but he was really impressive here last time. And Stargate won the Winter Novice Hurdle at Sandown. You don't really see horses sprint up the Sandown Hill like he did. So it looks to be a really good renewal. So that's definitely a treat for us racing fans. But my last selection, second of mine, will come in that the last at Newbury, the 3:45, the 2 mile handicap chase. And it would be the Kim Bailey trained Shanacoole Prince, who was off for a year, but made a really encouraging chasing debut, went second in a novice handicap at Southall. I don't think that sharp track really played to his strengths. He bumped into one of Paul Nicholls' called Blajou, who had first-time cheek pieces and was revitalised for them. And he shaped really well despite that sharp nature of the track. He probably will stay further than 2 miles, but I think a galloping 2 miles around Newbury when he's going to get an enforcing ride from David Bass, I think this is going to suit him to a T. And he's a point winner as well, so you'd expect him to be a better chaser than the hurdler. And although the MO of the Bailey Yard will be to get them relatively ready first time out, I still think there's improvement to come from him. And he's around the 9-2 mark. King Darjon's probably the likeliest danger. He's going to be the favourite. He's £11 higher than when winning on his chasing debut at Warwick. He won really easily on that occasion, and you have to respect him considering the yard, the form of the yard, the Harry Skelton yard. They've had 5 winners in the last 2 days at Kempton alone, and he does really well with his chasers, especially his novices. So he would be respected, but it would be Shanacoole Prince in the 3:45 for me, that last at Newbury. And we'll come across to Billy for the last of his in what looks competitive novice handicap over at Leopardstown.
Certainly is a competitive novice handicap, Kieran. I've gone for 2 William Mullins horses my previous 2 selections. I'm going to the complete opposite end of the training spectrum for the next one, and that's Jackson's Gold, who's in the care of Alice Curran, who really doesn't train that many horses at all. But this fella, I'm just hoping he's going to be a little bit overlooked in the markets, principally because of the fact that he's trained by Alice Curran and ridden by Ian Power, not a fashionable combination. But look at this fella's a very progressive horse. He's won 2 of his 4 starts, 2 of his 4 lifetime starts. And his win the last day at Thurles, I felt he was good value for it. He beat a horse of Gordon Elliott's called Frontal Assault, who's come out and won since. And his run the time before that at Cork, in fact, he was second to John McConnell's Streets of Diane, who of course went on and won at Cheltenham since. So his form is working out really well. The handicapper hasn't missed him, I suppose, a mark of 131. But at the same time, I think it doesn't overestimate him either. Like I said, he's only had 4 runs. He's open to further improvement. I like the fact that he stays farther than 2.5 miles. He's proven at 3. That's going to be important tomorrow, because you know, by the time that race comes around, the ground is going to be well chewed up, and it's going to take a bit of getting. It's going to suit him. Like I said, it's a wide open race. Top on Timeform ratings is 1,000,000-1, a horse who was behind Jackson's Gold at Thurles when he won the last day. But 1,000,000-1 actually got beaten in this race last year. He finished second in it last year. He hasn't won since, but he's running off a 6 pound higher mark tomorrow, and he's a horse that just tends to bump into 1. He should go close again tomorrow, Jack Kennedy riding, but he certainly won't be carrying my money. There's a number of others you could make cases for. Gavin Cromwell's presenting Megan down the bottom. If she bounces back to her best form, she'd have a great chance. As would Legacy Thor if he puts his best foot forward. He jumped off perfectly fine the last day. He's a talented horse, and he's certainly one that I'd be very wary of. But I do think Jackson's Gold is a progressive type. Like I said, I'm hoping he'll be a bigger price than he probably deserves to be due to connections. And yeah, I'm expecting a really big performance. He'll be there or thereabouts anyway, hopefully.
Brilliant. So that's Tuesday's racing covered. Thanks very much for your time, Billy, and best of luck to those who are following our selections or are doing their own. Thank you very much.